You think you're the hero of your own story, but you're actually the villain every day. You wake up and systematically destroy your own potential. You choose comfort over growth, excuses over action, familiar misery over uncertain greatness. The person staring back at you in the mirror is not your friend. They're the architect of your limitations. They've spent years building a fortress of realistic expectations and practical decisions. That's really just a prison while you're trying to motivate this person, inspire this person, and improve this person. Winners understand the truth. This person cannot be saved. They can only be eliminated. The question isn't how to become a better version of yourself. The question is, do you have the courage to murder who you are today? There comes a moment in every person's life when they stand at the crossroads of who they are and who they could become. That moment is not tomorrow, not next week, not when the circumstances are perfect. That moment is right now, you see. The greatest enemy to your future is not your circumstances, not your background, not the economy, not even other people. The greatest enemy to your future is the person you are today. I want to share with you the story of a man named Kenneth. Kenneth was a regional sales manager for a pharmaceutical company. Every morning he would wake up, put on his gray suit, drive the same route to work, sit in the same meetings, deal with the same problems, and come home to the same complaints from his wife about the same bills for 15 years. Kenneth lived this cycle. He was comfortable, predictable, and absolutely miserable. Had never once picked up a job or shared shoes in himself. He just drooped his voice and said, "Yek hang." Kenneth's 8-year-old daughter asked him a simple question that shattered his world. She said, "Daddy, why do you look so sad when you come home?" Kenneth realized that his daughter was watching him live a life of quiet desperation, and she was learning that this was normal. That night, Kenneth looked in the mirror and saw something that terrified him. He saw a man who had given up on his dreams, settled for mediocrity, and was teaching his daughter to do the same. But here is what Kenneth did not understand at that moment, and what most people never understand. The person staring back at him in that mirror was not the real Kenneth. It was a version of Kenneth that had been shaped by years of fear, compromise, and settling for less. The real Kenneth, the one with unlimited potential, was buried underneath layers of excuses, habits, and limiting beliefs. You see, most people think they are stuck with who they are. They believe that their personality, their capabilities, their circumstances are fixed. They say things like, "This is just who I am," or "I've always been this way," or "People like me don't do things like that." But these statements are not facts. They are programming. They are the voice of your old self trying to keep you exactly where you are. Your old self is not your friend. Your old self is not protecting you. Your old self is a prison warden that has convinced you that the cell is your home. Every time you try to step outside of your comfort zone, your old self sounds the alarm. It floods your mind with reasons why you should stay exactly where you are. It reminds you of past failures, current limitations, and all the things that could go wrong. The old you whispers, "Remember what happened last time you tried to start a business? You lost money. Remember when you tried to lose weight? You gained it all back. Remember when you applied for that promotion? They rejected you." The old you is the master of evidence collection. It can provide you with a detailed case study of why you should never attempt anything beyond your current reality. But I am here to tell you something that your old self does not want you to know. Every single successful person who has ever lived has had to kill their old version. They had to look at who they were and make a conscious decision to execute that person. Not literally, of course, but mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. When Kenneth finally understood this principle, everything changed. He realized that he was not stuck being the gray-suited, complaint-filling man who dragged himself to work every day. He could choose to kill that version of himself and create a new one. But killing the old version is not a gentle process. It is not meditation and positive thinking. It is surgical. It is brutal. It requires you to identify every habit, every thought pattern, every excuse, every limitation that your old self uses to keep you small, and then systematically destroy them. The old you will not go quietly when you start the process of transformation. Your old self will fight for its survival. It will create chaos in your life. It will make you doubt your decisions. It will remind you of how comfortable things used to be. It will even use the people closest to you to try to pull you back to who you were. This is why most people give up on change. They start the process, encounter resistance from their old self, and mistake that resistance for evidence that they are on the wrong path. But resistance is not evidence of wrong direction. Resistance is evidence that you are threatening the existence of your old self. And that is exactly what you should be doing. Kenneth learned this lesson the hard way. When he decided to quit his job and start his own consulting business, his old self went into full panic mode. His wife questioned his sanity. His friends reminded him of his mortgage and responsibilities. His own mind filled with doubts and fears. But Kenneth had made a decision. He was going to kill the version of himself that settled for mediocrity. And he was going to do whatever it took to birth a new version. The process was not easy. There were moments when Kenneth wanted to go back to his old job, back to his old routine, back to his old comfortable misery. But every time he was tempted to retreat. He remembered his daughter's question, "Daddy, why do you look so sad when you come home?" He realized that killing his old self was not just about him. It was about the example he was setting for his daughter. It was about showing her that people can change, that dreams can come true, and that settling is a choice, not a requirement. You are at that same crossroads today. You can continue to be the version of yourself that you have always been, or you can make the decision to kill that person and create someone new. But understand this, the old you will not volunteer to die. You must force it. You must be intentional, systematic, and ruthless in the execution of your former self. But before you can kill something, you must first understand exactly what it is you are killing. You cannot destroy what you cannot identify. This is where most people fail in their transformation attempts. They try to change their lives without understanding the anatomy of their old selves. They are like surgeons trying to operate blindfolded. Your old self is not just one thing. It is a complex system made up of specific components that work together to keep you exactly where you are. These components have been years in the making. They are sophisticated, interconnected, and designed for one purpose: survival. But what your old self considers survival, your future self recognizes as slow death. Let me tell you about Priscilla. Priscilla was one of the most talented tennis players in her country by age 16. She was ranked number 3 nationally in her age group. Everyone expected her to turn professional and compete at the highest levels. But there was a problem. Priscilla had learned tennis from her father. And her father had taught her a very specific way to hit the ball for years. This technique had worked. It got her wins, trophies, and recognition. But when Priscilla hired a professional coach to take her game to the next level, the coach told her something that shocked her. He said, "If you want to compete professionally, you must completely unlearn everything you know about hitting a tennis ball. Your current technique will only take you so far. To go further, that version of your game must die." Priscilla was devastated. She had spent years perfecting her technique. It was not just how she played tennis, it was who she was as a player. The coach was asking her to kill her tennis identity and start over. For months, Priscilla resisted. She argued that her old technique had brought her success. Why should she change what was working? But the coach explained something profound to Priscilla that applies to every area of life. He said, "The skills that got you here will not get you there. The habits that created your current success will become the ceiling for your future success. If you want to reach professional levels, you cannot just add new skills to your old foundation. You must tear down the old foundation and build a completely new one." This is the anatomy of your old self. Your old self is built on a foundation of beliefs, habits, and patterns that were appropriate for who you used to be, but are completely inappropriate for who you are trying to become. Your old self operates on outdated software. It makes decisions based on old information, responds to current situations with past programming, and approaches new opportunities with old limitations. The first component of your old self is your belief system. These are not just the things you say you believe. These are the deep unconscious beliefs that actually drive your behavior. Your old self believes things like, I am not smart enough. Success is for other people. I do not deserve better. Change is dangerous. I am too old to start over. People like me do not achieve great things. These beliefs were not born yesterday. They were planted in your mind years ago by experiences, failures, rejections, and the opinions of others. Over time, these beliefs grew roots. They became so much a part of your thinking that you stopped recognizing them as beliefs and started accepting them as facts. The second component of your old self is your emotional patterns. Your old self has trained you to feel specific emotions in response to specific situations. When opportunity presents itself, your old self feels fear. When success becomes possible, your old self feels unworthy. When change is required, your old self feels anxious. These emotional responses are not natural or inevitable. They are programmed reactions that your old self uses to keep you in familiar territory. The third component is your behavioral habits. Your old self has established routines that reinforce your current reality. You wake up at the same time, follow the same morning routine, interact with the same people, consume the same information, and make the same choices day after day. These habits are not just actions, they are votes. Every day, through your habits, you are voting for the person you want to remain. The fourth component is your social environment. Your old self has surrounded you with people who confirm your current identity. These are not necessarily bad people, but they are people who know you as you are, not as you are becoming. They will unconsciously resist your transformation because your change threatens their comfort with the predictable version of you. When Priscilla finally understood this anatomy, she made the difficult decision to kill her old tennis identity. It was not easy. For months, she played worse than she had in years. Her old technique fought against the new one. Her mind questioned every shot. Her confidence crumbled. There were days when she wanted to return to her old way of playing, but Priscilla persisted. She understood that this confusion and temporary decrease in performance was not failure. It was the death throes of her old tennis self. She was in the transition zone between who she was and who she was becoming. This zone is uncomfortable, uncertain, and often feels like moving backward. But it is not backward movement. It is the necessary destruction that must occur before reconstruction can begin. After 18 months of patient reconstruction, Priscilla emerged as a completely different player. Her new technique was not just better than her old one. It was in a different category entirely. She went on to compete professionally and achieve levels of success that would have been impossible with her old technique. Your life requires the same level of intentional reconstruction. You must identify each component of your old self and systematically dismantle it. Now that you understand what must die, the question becomes, how do you actually kill it? This is not a theoretical exercise. This is not about understanding concepts or gaining insights. This is about taking specific, measurable actions that will force your old self to die and create space for your new self to be born. Let me tell you about Rachel. Rachel was 34 years old and had been working as an accountant for 12 years. She hated her job, dreaded Monday mornings, and spent her weekends recovering from the stress of her work week. Rachel had always dreamed of becoming a photographer, but her old self had convinced her that photography was not a real career, that she needed the security of her accounting job, and that it was too late to start over. For years, Rachel talked about her photography dream. She would say things like, someday when I have more money, or when the kids are older, or after I pay off my student loans. But someday never came, because Rachel's old self was expert at creating conditions that would never be met. One day, Rachel had what she calls her awakening moment. She was sitting in a conference room listening to her boss discuss quarterly projections when she realized that she was living someone else's life. She was not just working as an accountant, she had become an accountant. Her identity, her daily actions, her social circle, even her clothes were all accountant. The dreamer inside her was suffocating that night. Rachel made a decision that changed everything. She decided to kill the accountant version of herself. But she was not going to wait for perfect conditions. She was going to start the execution process immediately. Rachel understood something that most people never learn. You cannot think your way into a new life. You must act your way into a new life. The first action Rachel took was to change her physical environment. She cleared out a corner of her basement and set up a photography studio. It was small and basic, but it was hers. Every time she walked past that corner, it reminded her that she was no longer just an accountant who dreamed about photography. She was someone who was actively building a photography business. Your physical environment is constantly programming your identity. If your environment reflects your old self, it will keep pulling you back to who you were, but when you change your environment to reflect who you are becoming, it starts programming your new identity. Rachel's basement studio was not just a room. It was a daily declaration that her old self was dying and her new self was being born. The second action Rachel took was to change her daily routine. Instead of spending her evenings watching television and complaining about work, she spent 2 hours every night learning photography, practicing with her camera, and building her portfolio. She woke up 1 hour earlier each morning to work on her business plan and marketing strategy. Your daily routine is your life in miniature. Show me your daily routine and I will show you your future. Your old self has a routine designed to maintain your current reality. If you want a new reality, you must force yourself to follow a new routine. This is not about motivation or inspiration. This is about discipline and systematic action. Rachel's old routine supported the accountant identity. Wake up, coffee, shower, drive to office, work, drive home, dinner, television, sleep. This routine reinforced her accountant identity every single day. Her new routine was designed to kill the accountant and birth the photography. Wake up early, photography business, work, shower, drive to office, work, drive home, dinner, photography practice, sleep. Notice that Rachel did not quit her job immediately. She understood that transformation is a process, not an event. She kept her accounting job to pay the bills while she systematically built her photography business. But every day, she was spending less mental and emotional energy on being an accountant and more energy on becoming a photographer. The third action Rachel took was to change her social circle. She stopped spending time with people who reinforced her old identity and started connecting with people who supported her new identity. She joined photography groups, attended workshops, and networked with other photographers. She found a mentor who had successfully made the transition from corporate work to professional photography. Your social circle is either pulling you toward your old self or pushing you toward your new self. There is no neutral ground. The people in your life are either helping you stay who you are or helping you become who you are meant to be. Rachel's accounting colleagues thought she was crazy to pursue photography. They reminded her of all the risks and challenges. But her new photography community encouraged her dreams and shared strategies for success. The fourth action Rachel took was to change her internal dialogue. Every time her old self whispered doubts and limitations, Rachel consciously replaced those thoughts with declarations of her new identity. Instead of, "I am not creative enough," she said, "I am developing my creative abilities every day." Instead of, "I am too old to start over," she said, I am at the perfect age to combine my life experience with my creative passion. Your internal dialogue is the voice of either your old self or your new self. Most people allow their old self to dominate the conversation in their mind. But Rachel forced herself to give her new self a voice. She wrote affirmations, recorded voice memos, and surrounded herself with visual reminders of who she was becoming, and to sort up preventively by mentally believing. After 18 months of systematic execution, Rachel had built a profitable photography business. She gave her boss 2 weeks' notice and became a full-time photographer. Today, 5 years later, Rachel runs a successful studio and cannot remember why she ever thought she was stuck being an accountant. The execution process is not complex, but it is comprehensive. You must simultaneously attack your old self from multiple angles. But here's what nobody tells you about transformation. Killing your old self is only half the battle. The other half is learning how to live as your new self, while the world around you is still expecting the old you. This is where most people fail. They successfully execute their old identity, but they do not know how to protect and nurture their new identity. They allow the pressure of external expectations to resurrect the very person they worked so hard to kill. Your new self is like a newborn baby. It is full of potential, but it is also vulnerable. It needs protection, nurturing, and constant care. Your old self had years to develop strength and resilience. Your new self is starting from zero. This means you must be intentional about creating conditions that allow your new identity to grow and flourish. Let me share with you the story of Antonio. Antonio grew up in a neighborhood where most young men ended up in one of three places: prison, dead, or trapped in minimum wage jobs with no future. Antonio's father was absent, his mother worked 3 jobs to pay rent, and his older brother was serving a 10-year sentence for armed robbery. By all statistical measures, Antonio was destined to follow the same path, but at age 19, Antonio made a decision that defied every expectation. He decided to kill the version of himself that accepted limitation and create a version that pursued excellence. Antonio enrolled in community college, got a part-time job, and started studying business. He stopped hanging out with friends who had no ambition and started connecting with students who were serious about their education. The execution process was difficult, but Antonio persisted. He changed his environment by moving out of his neighborhood and into a small apartment near the college. He changed his routine by studying every morning before work and every evening after work. He changed his social circle by joining study groups and business clubs. He changed his internal dialogue by replacing street language with professional vocabulary. After 2 years, Antonio had successfully killed his old self. He was no longer the young man from the streets with limited options. He was a college student with a business plan and a vision for his future. But this is when Antonio faced his greatest challenge. This is when he learned that your new self must be defended every single day. During his 3rd year of college, Antonio's brother was released from prison. His brother came to visit and was shocked by the transformation. Antonio was dressed differently, spoke differently, and had completely different priorities. His brother felt like he no longer knew Antonio. So his brother did what most people do when confronted with transformation in others. He tried to pull Antonio back to the familiar version. His brother said, "You are forgetting where you come from. You are acting like you are better than us now. This college thing is changing you into someone fake." His brother brought friends from the old neighborhood to visit. They reminded Antonio of the good times they used to have. They made him feel guilty for leaving them behind. They questioned whether his new life was really making him happy. This is the moment of truth for every person who has killed their old self. Your old environment will not celebrate your transformation. Your old friends will not applaud your growth. Your old family members will not support your evolution. They will feel threatened by your change because your transformation forces them to confront their own lack of transformation. Antonio almost gave in. There were moments when he missed the simplicity of his old life. There were times when he felt guilty for wanting more than his family and friends wanted. There were days when the pressure to return to his old self felt overwhelming. But Antonio understood something crucial. If he allowed his old environment to resurrect his old self, he would not just lose his progress, he would lose his soul. So Antonio made a decision that saved his new identity. He created boundaries. He told his brother and his old friends that he loved them, but he would not allow them to pull him back into patterns that would destroy his future. He explained that he was not trying to be better than them. He was trying to be better than he used to be. He offered to help them if they wanted to make similar changes in their lives. But he would not sacrifice his transformation to make them comfortable with their lack of transformation. This boundary setting was not easy. Some relationships ended. Some family members stopped speaking to him. Some friends accused him of being selfish and thinking he was too good for them. But Antonio realized that protecting his new self was not selfish. It was necessary. He could not help anyone else transform if he allowed them to prevent his own transformation. Your new self will face similar tests. People will try to remind you of who you used to be. They will bring up your past failures and old mistakes. They will question your new goals and challenge your new standards. They will make you feel guilty for growing beyond their expectations. But you must understand that their resistance to your transformation is not about you. It is about their fear of their own potential transformation. Antonio graduated from college with a business degree and started his own consulting company. Today, 15 years later, he employs over 50 people and has created wealth not just for himself, but for his entire community. But more importantly, Antonio has become a living example of transformation for young men in his old neighborhood. His success has inspired dozens of others to kill their old selves and create new identities. The key to protecting your new self is understanding that transformation is not a one-time event. It is a daily choice. Every morning, you must choose to be your new self instead of your old self. Every decision, every conversation, every action is an opportunity to either strengthen your new identity or weaken it. Your new self must be fed daily with new information, new experiences, and new challenges. Your old self was content with familiar routines and predictable outcomes. Your new self thrives on growth, learning, and expansion. You must constantly expose your new self to environments and situations that stretch its capabilities and confirm its potential. You must also develop what I call transformation immunity. This is your ability to resist the pressure to return to your old self when facing difficulty or criticism. Your old self will always seem like the easier option when your new self encounters resistance. But difficulty is not evidence that you are on the wrong path. Difficulty is evidence that you are growing. The person you are today is not the final version of yourself. You have the power to kill this version and create another one. And when that version has served its purpose, you can kill it and create an even better version. Transformation is not a destination, it is a way of life. The old you is waiting for permission to remain the same. The new you is waiting for you to force the change. The choice is yours. But the time is now. Force yourself to kill the old version of you and watch as the person you were meant to be rises from the ashes of who you used to be.